Welcome back to Kingdom of Yah. I'm going to be using the Living Word Bible and try one of these texts that needs to be tested that I haven't read through or haven't fully edited, and just to have something done today. So I'm going to do the story of Ahikar, however you'd like to say that. Ahikar. This is something that some I've even heard try to say either when crediting or even discrediting Jesus and his parables. Um, there's some similarities, maybe, but there's definitely no direct quotes or references. They try to say like he was copying something from him, but basically, this goes back to the time of Sennacherib. So we see this during Kings and Chronicles and Isaiah. So this goes back to the time of Isaiah. And this is one of his wise men, basically, his counselor. So this is someone who did practice wisdom. And this is to go and show, regardless of what text you're looking at, and this is even true with some of the non-Christian texts, which I've put over here, which I'll probably put in a different category. And I'm even debating about putting this on a different YouTube channel and everything. I definitely will use this on other channels, but I've got a fellowship thing that I'm working on building right now that is a non-religious thing, which ironically goes deeper into what religion should be doing, which is teaching people righteousness and teaching them how to treat each other and focusing on that than that alone and not religious practices. Religious practices are supposed to help remind you and help form these ideas and strengthen them in your head and not convince you that doing these religious practices are the righteousness itself. But they're supposed to be a congregation of people who are practicing righteousness, who are practicing selflessness, right? And we see that this is constantly failing regardless of what religion you choose. So this idea would be to strip away to all of the religious ideas and practices, not that you shouldn't do those practices, but again, take them away from being the forefront of how you perceive God and what you perceive as being righteous. Going to church every Sunday does not make you righteous, right? And it also doesn't make you unrighteous by not going to church every Sunday or ever at all, right? It always comes down to your own heart and your own walk, right? Regardless of what religion you're in, even, right? And this is something that may be argued otherwise, but from what I've found by making this Living Word Bible, is there is no defined canon. There is nothing, and all scripture is for good, right? And this is something I've seen even in some of these other texts, especially like say even the Rig Veda, which I might even make an argument that it was never even polytheistic at all. That it seems to be talking about different aspects of one God, right? Because it often talks about this oneness of God. But then there's other, Hindu texts that go on top of that many, 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 many years later, right? That start fleshing this out into many more aspects that are again taken as individual gods. And you could argue, you could do the same thing about God in the Bible, that there's these other aspects that you could choose to call other gods. People do this even with the Trinity and not understanding what the Trinity is. Simply just the Father, the one God, his Son, and the rest of the angels, and that's your Holy Spirits, right? So the same could be with how wisdom is talked about. Wisdom is personified very strongly, very heavily, especially in Solomon's work. It's very, very strong, and the same thing is seen in so many other cultures, and they have the same parables, the same ideas, the same understanding of what this truth is. And many of these cultures and many of these texts, and possibly including the one we're about to look at, talk about truth as something more than just fact. It's not about something that's factual, it's something that's universally sound and true, right? And this is what Paul goes on about over and over and over again. Whenever he says sound doctrine, this is uncorruptible doctrine, right? If you look at the Greek there, it's a little bit more clear, but this is the truth that can't be perverted, right? This is the truth that everyone agrees with. Everyone understands the basics of you shouldn't kill people and you should be nice to people, and that focusing on yourself leads to self-destruction and destruction of others, and it's as simple as that, right? So this is what I aim to do, either with this ministry that I may continue with or not, or turn it into something else. So I plan to have something that is a lot less pressure on the belief and religious side of things, where again, your understanding, your knowledge of God is irrelevant to how He is going to judge you. He's always going to judge and weigh your heart, right? And your deeds, regardless of what religion, regardless of what information you've been brought up with, what you've been brainwashed with, whatever it is that you like, right? So we can't just be so unfortunate to have been born in, a cultic practices, or in polytheistic practices, or monotheistic practices, or atheistic practices, right? It doesn't really matter which number you rolled with the dice there. It matters with what you choose to do with your heart, and definitely those things can, your environment can definitely help guide you into being more bitter and being more selfish, especially if that is taught. And I think that's going to come down to judgment more on the teacher than the student. But we have to have good faith that the Father has great judgment, and He's going to be able to judge us really, truly, righteously, and give us every ounce of mercy he can find, right? And this has nothing to do with whether you believe in Jesus, which is a terrible term to say, right? Because what is believing in Jesus? Believing in Jesus is doing what He did. It has nothing to do with knowing who He was and believing that He walked around and died for us or anything like that. It has to do with actually doing what He was saying. And there's many people in the world at that time, after that time, and way before that time, which were already doing these things. And this is basically the whole story of Abraham, especially when you start looking at other texts. Jubilees is pretty specific about it. I think there's even something in the Jewish book of Jasher here, which, take it with a grain of salt, but there is definitely good teachings and stories and stuff in it. It definitely comes from Judaism, but not that everything they do is anything, right? You can't really slap on these black and white labels to things, because that's where you really start going astray. So um, Abraham basically comes out of nowhere with believing in God, and showing that he had this heart and had this righteousness, and he even objects to his father and his idols that he's making, without being taught by anyone, without having a book, without having even God's language anymore. Hebrew is gone, right? According to Jubilees, at least, right? Hebrew is gone. Uh, no one worships the Father anymore, right? Everything's gone since Noah died, it seems, right? Everyone started going astray and being selfish and doing their own things, and saying what kind of rule and what they wanted to do, and creating these gods like with Nimrod. But regardless of some major ruler like Nimrod that creates these gods or forces you to bow down to a statue, it always comes down to your heart and down to your own reasoning, right? Do you want to be ruled over, whether by someone else or yourself by emotion, or do you want to be ruling and making decisions based off of reason, based off of logic and understanding, right? And putting others first. And this is really where wisdom comes down from the Father, right? And He chooses who to give wisdom to. And again, this can come to anyone with that heart, regardless of your religion, regardless of your background. It really just doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. So I'm just going to take a chapter here just to get this started, and then I'll probably save this for another video here. So I'm starting these off with some sort of preamble here of saying what this is about, kind of trying to pull out the key points here. And again, I'm just doing this with AI right now until I can rewrite this. I usually do that as kind of a placeholder. also with some of the verses that it pulled up, I'm going to have to actually go through and find more or better verses that more align with this. But this is just to get the idea down. And then after I'm done reading through this and really going, okay, yes, this speaks about truth, right? This is going to be my criteria. Does this speak about truth, and does this get you on the right path, the path of righteousness, the straight path, the way? Everyone calls it pretty much the same thing throughout every culture. And then I'll put it up somewhere a little bit more reachable, either in the others, or it might even consider putting it in the major book, because it used to be a pretty major book. So this is something that was guiding people since Isaiah, right? So this is a pretty prominent text apparently, but I haven't actually read through it myself. I do have some summaries here at the bottom. Again, just done with AI right now, until I can go through and kind of reword some of this and make it a little cleaner and maybe get to a more certain point. So I've already formatted most all of this, I believe, to something that's a little bit more readable, at least more readable for myself. So I'm just going to go through a chapter here. There's only a handful of chapters. So the story of Ahikar. I'm going to have to figure out how to say that right. Akiar is what they usually say. Akiar. Um, no, Haikar. Let's just say Haikar. The wise advisor of Sennacherib the king, and Nadon's sisters of Nadon's sister's son to Haikar the sage. And the sage is again just wise. So the wise. I don't know. I can get rid of that underline. Um, Same as magi or even wizard. All of these things just mean wise. Typically, there was a wise advisor, someone who practiced selflessness, who practiced reading and really practiced reason to advise a king. There was an advisor in the days of King Sennacherib, son of Sarhardam, king of Assyria and Nineveh. And some of these I'll probably end up putting. I usually typically just put the location. Where's Nineveh? What happened? What? I don't know. It just went over the ball there. I don't know why I did that. Anywho, no, this is just freaking out, I think, is the issue. Okay, so typically I'll also have a hyperlink to where these locations are. Syria, that's kind of a given, but any major places that might be more interesting. And again, this is the city that Jonah went to. A wise man named Ahikar, I'm going to say Ahikar. And he was advisor of the king of Sennacherib. He had a fine fortune, or he had a fine fortune and much goods. Worded a little odd here. I'm also going to put that down here. And he was skillful, wise, a philosopher in knowledge and in opinion and in government. And he had married 60 women, and he had built a castle for each of them. That would be interesting to find any evidence of. But with it all, he had was no children and by any of these. So he's trying to create an heir. So by who could be his heir? He was very sad on the account of this. So he's unable to have children even through 60 women. So that's quite a curse here, let's say. And one day he assembled the astrologers and learned men the wizards, there we go, the wise men, and explained to them his condition and the matter of his barrenness. So he's turning to men instead of God. So here's your first point, right? He's struggling and he's going to what would effectively be equivalent to doctors or something like this, right? He's trying to figure out, okay, why am I barren? Why am I not creating children here? They said to him, go sacrifice to the gods and beseech them that perchance they may provide you with a boy. So this is their understanding, the basic pagan understanding of, go kill something, go give something away to these gods, these whichever spirits are out there. It's kind of like shooting from the hip, shooting blind, and hoping that you hit something. This is pretty typical, and also something that's seen in Thailand that I've noticed is they don't even know who they're praying to. They just kind of give sacrifices to whatever is there, right? And it's usually just water and food or something like that. He did as they told him, offer sacrifices to the idols, and besought them and implored them with request and entreaty. Sorry, asking them. They answered not one word, obviously, and he went away sorrowful and dejected, and departing with pain in his heart. He returned and implored the. So this is all. So this is Hakar that has the 60 women, not the king. I don't know if I'm reading that right. So now suddenly he returned and implored to Most High God, and believed, beseeching him, and with a burning in his heart, saying, O Most High God, our O Creator of the heavens and earth, O Creator or Creator of all created things, I beseech you and give to you, or give me a boy, that I may console, be consoled by him. So he wants to feel better by this issue that's happening, that he may be present at my health, and that he may close my eyes, and that he may bury me. So he's hoping to not only pass on his lineage here, but have someone to bury him. So sounds like he's pretty alone here. Then there came to him a voice saying, and this is where I'm gonna need some other thing here. So I would like to have this done as well. So I assume this is R. It doesn't say anything about the king saying anything, so this is just of his own doing here. Okay, so I'm just going to say this is God or an angel, however, right? Inasmuch as you have relied first on the graven images and have offered sacrifices to them, for this reason you will remain childless your life long, so your whole life. I'll have to fix some of the wording on here too. It's just the bad old translations are kind of old English here. But take Nadan, your sister's son, so your nephew, and make him your child and teach him your learning and your good breeding. So he's kind of making a compromise with him. And at your death he will bury you. Thereupon he took Nadan, his sister's son, who was still basically nursing, and he had handed him, this typically usually means under 2 years old, handed him over to 8 wet nurses, so these are nursing women, that they might nurse him and bring him up. They brought him up with good food and gentle training, and silken clothing, so fancy. Purple and crimson, so I usually highlight these because this is royal clothing. So this is going to be made from the Phoenicians, right? The purple people, right? So these are from the people who make purple. This is typically where it came from the Eastern Mediterranean here. So crimson, red. I like to usually highlight those so you can only get red, blue, or purple out of these colors. Blue takes some extra work, but purple and red are from two different mollusks of the same kind, really. He was seated upon couches of silk, so he grew up fancy. When Nadan grew big and walked, shooting up like a tall cedar, he taught him good manners in writing and science and philosophy. After many days, King Sennacherib looked over Ahikar and saw that he had grown very old. And moreover, he said to him, "O my honored friend, skillful, the trustworthy, the wise, the governor, my secretary, my advisor, my chancellor, and director. Truly, you are grown very old and weighted with years, and your departure from this world must be near. Tell me who will have a place in my service after you." So, who's going to replace you? So, this is where I'm going to need this again. So, this is Sennacherib, and usually I just replace those if it doesn't say anything different. And the king said, so I'm going to have to say, I usually put King Sennacherib, but this is okay. So now we just have clean dialogue. Uh, oh, my master, may your head live forever. There is Nadan, my sister's son. I have made him my child, and I have brought him up and taught him my wisdom and my knowledge. I wish they would say like some ages and dates or something, but not much to go off of here. But that's clearly not the point. And Hikar, bring him to my presence, that I may see him, and if I find him suitable, put him in your place, and you will go your way and take a rest and to live the remainder of your life in sweet repose. So then the question too is, why is he not trying to advise Sennacherib on his own change of faith here? And also, how did he know to go to basically this statueless figure to cry out to instead of going to these idols? Unless this is just, again, this is something that he is told to do clearly to honor the king, kind of thing, right? But yet he had something else in his own mind. Was this from his own wisdom that he was told to do this? So is this similar to Abraham, where he had just kind of come to this realization of his own? This is also where Sikhism also comes from, is the same idea where it just, boom, comes to him and he's like, oh, wait, there's one God, right? Something that seems to be pretty ingrained in all of us in some way. So then he went and presented Nadan. He did homage and wished him power and honor. He looked at him and admired him and rejoiced with him and said to he, being Sennacherib, must be. This is why I have to do this so I can figure out who's actually talking. All this he said, she said stuff is just aggravating. It said to him, okay. So if it says any kind of extra information like that, I'll just leave that there. But is this your son, O Hikar? I pray that God may preserve him as you have served me and my father. And again, I just do this Elohim just across the board, so just it's consistent. But either way, and my father Sarhadam. I don't know if I have any information on him, but I'll probably have to look that up. So that this boy of your service, or sorry, so may this boy of your serve of yours, this boy of yours serve me. This is weird. And fulfill my undertakings and my needs and my business, so that I may honor him and make him powerful for your sake. So he did obedience to the king and said to him, May your head live, long live the king, and my lord the king forever. I seek from you that you may be patient with my boy Nadon and forgive his mistakes, that he may serve you as it is fitting. Then the king swore to him that he would make him the greatest of his favorites and the most powerful of his friends, and that he should be with him in honor and respect. He kissed his hands and bade him farewell. Bid him farewell. I'll just say bid him farewell. Bid him farewell, and took Nadon his sister's son with him, and seated him in a parlor, and set about teaching him day and night until he had crammed him with wisdom and knowledge. It's an interesting wording. Crammed him with wisdom and knowledge, more than with bread and water. So, okay, more than food, which I'm sure he was getting plenty of as well, right? So, again, this is just the little summation here. The wise advisor to the king of Syria had great knowledge and power and possessions, sought from astrologers in humility and repentance. He then turned to, I'll separate that, then turned to the Most High, praying secretly from his heart. Um, I'll do all this as well. Um, I can just summarize this and just put like God or something, but Ahikar obeyed, loving, reasoning, they done, wisdom, discipline. Ahikar grew old, presented him to the king, and yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So I have this as an idea. This is something that can be changed. Um, just put that down there for now. So spiritual teaching. This is just kind of vague. True reliance must be first placed on the Most High and not false substitute. That's pretty generic. Earthly wisdom and wealth and status cannot replace sincere faith. That I like. When Ahikar turned from idols and humbled himself before God, he received direction, though not in the form he originally desired. So this is also a pretty big thing too. So we often have this ideal understanding of what we want or what we need, acting like we understand more about what we need than what God thinks, right? The chapter teaches that misplaced trust brings consequences. So he's like, well, because you have done this, I'm not going to give you your own child, because you've been sacrificing to nothing, right? You've been wasting your life and not turning to what was already in your heart. You already knew about me. You know that these things don't do anything. You know better, but you're still falling in line with what you're being taught through fear of a king, through fear of judgment of others, right? Whatever the issue is, through just even superstition, right? Oh man, if I don't do this, then something bad will happen. But repentance brings guidance. So actually turning away from these things and understanding what really matters, what really works. That legacy is not merely biological, but spiritual and moral, passed through faith, teaching, and righteous instructions. And also, this might be, kind of a double thing, because if he's taking his sister's son, that means his brother-in-law, maybe he's dead, maybe he's gone, right? So it doesn't really say anything about that, but I would assume that this is why he would adopt his sister's son, if not just simply so he can make him royalty effectively, right? That's also a good reason, but it doesn't say anything about his father, so they seem to be happy about that. I'm sure it was a pretty good deal, and to have him learn all of this understanding and then be, second to the king is pretty amazing honor, I'm sure. So And, there's, I think, a handful of chapters here. Maybe I can do some more reading on this and do some more revising on it as well as some of the wording here. I'll have to reword here and there, kind of help this translation out. With something like this, I'm not going to have a very good source text. My source text is just going to be old translations. Unless you can find any sort of original source text on what this could have been written in, then I can probably make a lot better translation. But yeah, we've got 7 chapters here, so maybe I can save a video just to go read through these and see what kind of better notation I can make. Not that there was a whole lot of lesson in just this one chapter, because there's not really a lot that happened, but I think this is still a pretty good one, pretty good lesson, especially for people back then with idols just everywhere. So this is showing that he did get what he was really wanting, but not in the way that he wanted it, but in a way that still fulfilled everything he needed, right? But didn't feed to his own ego that he can have his own lineage go down. And there's still a lot of focus today, but even especially back then, on bloodline, right? Bloodline really just does not mean anything. We're all just people. We're all just creations of God, and doesn't matter who we were created through, right? We were still created in his image and his reasoning and his understanding, and to be imparted with his wisdom, right? If we can turn to him, we can gain his wisdom. And clearly he was walking well enough to get some sort of wisdom here to be in this position. And again, this is something that it seems to be, according to the Bible, that comes from God. And you see that's with a good heart. And you could definitely learn reasoning and more logical, scientific, or whatever kind of knowledge yourself for sure. And if you don't have wisdom to go with that, it's just going to end up leading you astray and leading you further into your own goals, your own desires, right? And that's not going to end up very well. And it's not going to be able to store your treasures in heaven. And that's the ultimate goal here, is to be able to store your treasures in heaven. So we'll continue to see this and test this, and if this is sound scripture, then it will go up towards the top and hopefully be there for somebody to see and someone to read and test it themselves. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments.